Altered does a lot of things that modern trading card games do.
That's a lot of boosters.
Yeah.
To get what I need.
Or either that or he's just that much better than me. Hey everybody, I'm Tom Vasel.
I'm Zee Garcia.
And today we're taking a look at a game called Altered. And by game, I mean trading card game.
Mm-hmm.
This is a game that was on Kickstarter, raised almost $8 million.
That's right.
It's from Asmodee. Well, not Asmodee specifically. It's one of Asmodee's companies.
Right.
And it has artwork, and I think it's in like the same world, or at least has the same art as some games they've done before.
Well, it's from the
like
same...
Seasons and things like that.
Yeah, it's from the same designer as Seasons, who runs that studio now, and so it has very similar artwork to Seasons specifically. And it's supposed to be a trading card game approached from the point of view of someone who makes European-style games, if you would, right? This is a French trading card game through and through.
So there's a couple things here. This is, like we said, a trading card game. We have the 6 starting decks. There are 6 colors. When you make a deck, it has to be all of one color. Mm-hmm. There's 6 colors. I think I've played either with or against all of them, but we also got a box of boosters, and I made a couple decks, which somehow still lost. I'm not very good at building decks, I guess. Before we get into how the game plays, I do want to mention that one of the biggest aspects to this game
mm-hmm.
is or at least when they promoted it,
yes,
was the digital aspect of this. There are QR codes on every single card. You scan these cards, they become yours virtually. Mm-hmm. You can, according to the thing, you can lend cards to other people. There are ways to get, if your card gets ripped up or burned up in a fire, you can get it. There are cards that are yours, and there's cards called unique cards that you're the only person in the world who has that card.
There's a way to foil a card. You can give them a foiler and the original, and they will give you a foiled version of that card. But
so with all that in mind, all that exists. But we're here today just talking about how does the game play.
Yeah.
I haven't messed with that other stuff too much. I know it exists. Honestly, I'm not particularly drawn to it. I would see I'm going to mess with it to see what it's like, but I just don't care, really.
Right.
How does the game play? Zee's going to show you, and then we'll talk about it.
The objective of the game is to bring your hero's expedition and your companion's expedition together somewhere along this track. If you do that before your opponent, you win the game. And in order to do that, at the end of every round, you are going to check if you qualify for that. You're going to take your token and move it along. If the card is still face down, you're going to flip that card face up, and you will move on to the next terrain, and so on if they are still face down until one of you two wins. You begin with a leader. That hero is going to begin right here in this spot, and here I'm using the starter deck in this Ortis faction. You shuffle up your deck. You're going to draw 6 cards from that, and you are going to put 3 of those 6 face down right here in the mana area of your player mat here. The other 3 are going to be in your hand. So here I've got my 3 starting cards in my hand. We also have flipped this token and decided a random starting player. It's me. We are now ready to go. So here are the phases of the day, and we continue playing days until one of the 2 players wins. So the first phase is morning, where we change the first player. We don't need to do that. You ready your cards, you draw 2 cards, and then you may put one of them into your mana area from your hand. We don't need to do any of those things for the first round. The second phase would be the noon phase, and we apply anything that says at noon, something, something, something. Like this one right here, for example, happens to have a at noon option, and it says at noon, I create a recruit in my hero expedition. So there are 2 expeditions. This one happens to be my hero expedition. This one is my companion expedition. So if I create an Ortis recruit, that's one of these tokens here. I'm going to put that right there, and it is going to have, it's just a token, and it has 3 values, as many of the cards will. You'll see that there are 3 values there. 1 in green, the mountains, and the water, right? So plains, mountains, water, something like that. So I've done the at noon, And if the other player has done the same thing, then we are good to go. And then we go into the afternoon phase, which is the meat of the game. We are going to go back and forth taking actions. An action is basically playing a card, putting a card, triggering a card from your hand or from your reserve. There are other things above and beyond that, activating abilities just by exhausting cards and whatnot. That doesn't take up your whole action. Your whole action is playing a card. And so I might play a card from my hand. Let's say I want to play this card here. It's going to have up here a cost. The cost is 1 from my hand. The secondary cost is also 1, but that's from the reserve. And then there are values, a 1, a 2, 2, and a 2, 1, 2, 2 there. And then this I could play out there somewhere, either in this expedition or in this expedition. So let's say I'm going to do it in the other expedition for now. I'm going to put this over here in my companion's expedition. And that's my turn. I have to pay 1 for that, so I exhaust this card. Then my opponent takes a turn. They play something on their side. Obviously, this would still be here for the very first turn of the game, and I wouldn't know what that is. Comes back to me, I can play a card myself. So for example, I might play this card right here. It is a spell instead of a character. And this spell says it's called Charge. It costs 2, so I'll have to spend these 2. And then it explains down here, Fleeting. This card has Fleeting. Fleeting means that this will not, after resolving, go to reserve. It's going to go away to my discard pile, okay? And it says, characters you control gain 1 boost. Great. So let's say I played this. I spent this 2 mana. I discarded this in my discard pile down here. And then this character gets a boost. This character gets a boost. They each have +1 to all 3 of their stats, okay? Goes back to my opponent, comes back to me. Let's say I pass. I'm out of mana to spend. We are done. And we go now to the next phase, once my opponent also passes, which is Dusk. During Dusk, we are going to compare our statistics in the 3 land types to each other. Now, you only advance and you only need to check for the land types where you are. You begin in all 3 on both sides, but as you saw earlier, if this character, if my hero had already advanced once, I only can concern myself with the mountain, meaning if I win in mountains, then I may advance. If I win in one of the other 2, doesn't affect me. I don't get to advance. So, being over here, I would compare. The green would be 2, 2, and 2. If I beat my opponent in at least one of those, I will advance. Over here, same thing. This is 1 + 1, so 2, 3, 3. Let's say that, again, I beat my opponent in at least one of those things, I will advance. Like so. Perhaps my opponent also advanced, let's say, in this one, but they didn't best me in any of these 3, so that one won't advance. They'll just stay there. And at most, as you can see, you only advance once on each side. With the Dusk done, then we go to the Night phase. During the Night phase, then the characters go to reserve. So this character here is going to go to reserve. This token goes away. This one here would also go to reserve, but it is a token character. It simply goes away. You can keep up to 2 characters in reserve and up to 2 landmarks in these locations. And now we are done. We go to the morning of the next day. I give my opponent the counter here. It's their turn. And so we go through everything again. We change the first player, draw 2, ready everything, and then you may play 1 new mana and build up the things you can pay for. And once again, we're going to be able to play. But you can now play from your reserve. For that secondary cost, you can bring something out from here. So if I wanted to, this upcoming round, I could pay 1, I could bring this out again. It now comes in with this token, which means when it goes away from that expedition, it just goes to the discard. It does not come back to the reserve. So this is a one-time thing, unless there's an ability that says they don't gain this, all right? And so that's the idea. You're comparing these 2 running totals every round, trying to move closer together. The landmarks are sort of ongoing abilities that you can exhaust to trigger something, or they give you something that happens at noon and they keep recurring. My hero has that, in fact, so I would bring, once again, I would bring out my recruit and put them back out there. And this continues until one of the two players manages to win. If the tokens reach each other, my two and their two at the same time, then there's sort of a standoff round. We play one more round where we compare everything and we see who the strongest player is. But that's pretty much the flow of the game. Some cards are going to gain these anchored tokens. That means they stay in the expedition instead of coming to the reserve. Some of them get these tokens, and that'll have its own effect. But most of them are going to get these boosts, which are +1 and +2 on the other side. And so you're leveling up your totals, trying to win in that expedition. So that's a general overview of the game. Hopefully that gives you an idea of what is going on. Let's go ahead and go back up top.
So Altered, I guess let's talk about the components first. It's like any typical collectible card game, all the way down to the rules that you unfold like a map.
Yeah, you get the paper play mat, of course, and you're going to get...
terrible, thin component counters.
It's all about the cards. At the end of the day, these games are about cards, and the bits and extra pieces are not great quality. I'm doing another video in which I'll be talking about the extra bits and pieces you can get. Play mats, nicer tokens, all of that stuff. So make sure you check that video out. But we'll stick with what's in these starters for now, and booster packs, I suppose.
So I don't know how I feel about this. On one hand, the artwork is gorgeous. There's no question on that. They even did the Hearthstone style thing where when the same card gets rarer, the art kind of expands a bit.
Yeah,
it's a little bit
fancy.
more. There's more explosions. Did you find the QR codes to be ugly and or distracting?
You know, I really thought it would be particularly attention-grabbing or distracting, and I just sort of very quickly was able to ignore them.
Yeah,
Didn't bother me.
I went into this with a really negative attitude about them. And when we played, I just forgot they existed.
I agree. I think they did a good job with that.
So with any collectible card game or trading card game, there's always keywords. I felt like this one does a good job at not overdoing the keywords. There's like 6 maybe.
And they do a good job of being the first set of something. They explain the keyword. They give you the keyword, then in parentheses and italics, this is what this is. And I think that's always a good idea, especially for a brand new trading card game. There's one thing it does interestingly, which is it speaks in first person to you. I haven't really seen too many other trading card games that do that. Like a card will say, when I show up, I do this thing. I'm like, oh, when this card shows up.
Yeah, the cards use I.
Yeah, they speak in first person. Works well. Not a problem. Yeah, I thought the keywords were there and not overwhelming, handled well.
That being said, I'm just okay on the theme. The theme is, it's, fairy tale creatures with some real people thrown in, like Amelia Earhart's in the game, and some stuff
Joan
like...
of Arc.
Yeah, that's kind of weird. I guess they're people who've become myths in their own right. And the cutesy animals and all that. I know a lot of people are going to like that. I found it just to be okay. It almost pushed the... don't get me wrong, I don't want Kingdom Death Monster in all my games, but this kind of pushed the limits of like,
Cutesy.
sneezing shrooms. I'm like, all right. And I didn't dislike it, but also it doesn't make me go, ooh, I got this character. As maybe Star Wars, I was like, oh, I got, Darth Maul.
And you know that IP, but even if
I know these IPs too.
That's fair, I suppose. But even if it was, and this is not based on anything as far as we can tell, except that there's real people in it. But I'll agree with you that I think the trappings here, the thematic trappings are, for me, one of the weaker parts of the game. It is, they explain it away with one little blurb at the top of the rule book, and it is, the world we've crashed into this other fantasy world. Go explore. It's weak. It's very weak. I thought it was, I know what they're going for. They want this to be a very, very deep pool. This feels misguided. Like there's no direction. I don't know which way we're pointing. Don't like that.
Alter does a lot of things that modern trading card games do. Mm-hmm. Using any card as a resource, and in this one they're orbs, I think, to tap or exhaust, to put out cards. It's very modern. In fact, it's the other two big new CCGs, both
Lorcana
and Star Wars,
yeah.
both do the very similar thing. It doesn't have too much problem with card draw. You're drawing 2 every round, and there are other things. It's playing cards out, comparing stats on 2 different sides, and that is, they do a twist on it, but it's pretty similar to a lot of other games.
Sure. It's a little mathy. I would say it's a little mathy.
It can be. The big thing about this game, that their big twist is this reserve section, where every card, not every card, but most cards can be played twice. So you play a card out, and then it goes to reserve, and then you can play it again from reserve. Reserve's like a mini hand of 2 cards, or maybe more, depending on what goes on.
Yeah.
That's clever. I liked it okay, and it wasn't onerous, I thought.
I like the things they're doing with them already, even in the first set. I like that, okay, this card doesn't go there. It's too good. You don't get it again. This card goes there, and it's cheaper the second time. Cool. I like that. This card goes there, and instead of playing it from there, you could actually throw it away from the reserve, and it does something else with a new ability at the bottom. I like that very much. It's a way for you to have sort of multiple things you can do in a single go without timing issues and it being a very clean back and forth and back and forth. That's another thing that I think this gets a nod for. When was the last time we played a trading card game that you didn't have to go, okay, hold on now. If I want to do something at the same time you want to do something, which one goes first? Do we have to put it on the stack or on the chain or on the whatever? This is very clean.
And you play a card, that is a turn.
Yeah.
That's very helpful. Like, is that a turn? No, that was a free action. Playing a card is your turn.
Yes. Another thing I will say that I think this does, and it's appreciated, is you start with 3 mana. You skip some of that lame ramping at the beginning.
Yeah. Well, Star Wars did that too.
Yeah, and I think it's again very modern to see that you draw 6 cards, 3 go face down, and they're already your money, and the other 3 are in your hand. I like that. You can skip the first 2 sort of really weak turns.
Yeah, the game itself has these different types of cards. So speaking as, I went and did deck building. Yeah. On one hand, deck building is easy because you're like, here's the pink cards, build as. And they definitely have, right now there's only 3 leaders for each faction. You kind of pick your leader and then you say, I'll put cards in that do that. Like the pink faction, one of the leaders is with dice. And I'm like, ooh, that sounds fun. And one of the factions is get more orbs out. And so that works well. What I'm not a big fan of is the rare cards are not easy to tell. They have little R's or F's at the bottom. The instructions aren't very clear on it. They're like, you can put 15 in the deck, but the rare cards are also clearly better versions of the common cards. So if you're building a deck, you better put 15 in.
You have to, get 15,
Right. They're not hard to get necessarily, but you need to put 15 of those in, and then you got 3 uniques, and the uniques are super rare. They're like 1 in every 8 packs, and hopefully you get one that works with you. But then again, because of the nature of the digital thing, I guess you could go online and find that perfect one. It's weird to me that there is hundreds of cards that are the same, but all slightly different.
Yeah, the one thing I'll say that I think is a negative here from a sort of longevity and collectability is that the decks are mono-colored. So when you are building a deck, and I'm building this deck here, it is the Ordis starter deck. I'm going to be opening cards in packs of 6 colors. Right. I'm looking for 1. That is a lot of cards that I'm not interested in. I pull a unique every 8 packs on average. And it's 1 of 6 colors. I'm looking for 1. That's a lot of chaff, right? That's kind of the term. It's a lot of the stuff you're not using, a lot of the stuff that becomes trade fodder, ideally. Yes, of course, you can keep multiple colors. You can keep them all. You can build it all. If you are playing with the deck you like, that's 1 color. You do not mix colors here, at least so far. So that seems like a lot of bulk to what you're looking for, unfortunately. I like it from a variety point of view. But if I was going to be opening and buying and opening booster packs to build my 1 deck up, to look for a few cards for 1 deck that's a little slim, that's a lot of boosters.
Yeah.
To get what I need. Maybe. You know what I mean?
The game, some of the marketing was real big on, hey, there's no fighting. This is a Euro-style game. That's true, but only in theory. In actual practice, we are fighting on the two battlefields in a sense. I don't see any way. I'm just trying to have higher numbers than you. I play higher numbers, and there are definitely cards, particularly the sabotage cards, which take out an opponent's card, and that's... I don't sit there and go, tee-hee, that wasn't an attack. That was straight up an attack. He just got rid of the card I was about to play.
Yeah, thematically, they're saying there's no combat, but it feels like confrontation.
Yeah, I mean, there's no other way to do it. You're basically, you're fighting on the battlefield to move these things closer together, and there's some good strategy there. So to that end, when I first played this, I did not like it. My first 2 games of it, I gave it a 5. I thought it was just too basic and obvious. And I kept playing it, and my rating has gone up to a 7. I enjoy it fine now, especially when I get in a deck building. It lets me make the kind of cards I want in a deck. The starting decks aren't bad. I think they're, I mean, again, I got beat by starting decks. Or either that or he's just that much better than me.
No, they're good. I think they're well put together, yeah.
They're good decks, and it's neat that they have them, but building just makes things better for me, and I enjoyed it. However, even though I give it a 7, I don't know that I'm going to engage much more with Altered. I only can play so many trading card games. We're not going to get into in this video, but there's a whole thing about, well, you're paying to play, essentially.
Right.
You could buy, as with any trading card game, you can buy 2 starting decks and have a great game. You don't have to buy more.
Sure.
But I'm someone who wants to buy more and do that, and I don't necessarily, I'm already doing that with Star Wars, and Star Wars to me is leaps and bounds more interesting to me, and I think it's a better game. I think this is a good game. It's fun. It's pretty. It works okay. I don't think it's groundbreaking. I think the reserve part is neat, but it's not enough to get me in. Now, of course, like Lorcana was also very basic when it first came out, and I know that subsequent sets have made that more interesting. Sure. That might happen here, too. I worry about this one on a general level because it doesn't have as strong intellectual property. Robin Hood and Tinkerbell do not draw the same people in.
Right.
As Disney and Star Wars.
Yeah.
And even the Disney and Star Wars ones, I'm not confident they'll be made in 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
So we'll see. It had a great opening with their Kickstarter, but will people keep playing it because that's what these games live and die on?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. For me, I'm giving this one an 8. I'm really enjoying it, and there are many things I like. I like the idea of the exploration is how you win, the 2 tokens coming together. Yes, it's a thematic stretch, but I liked it. I like the reserve. I like the way the card play works. I enjoy the game as a game. It does feel a little bit like a trading card game designed by someone whose main job is not designing trading card games. And I enjoy that. It sort of feels a little bit different, you know. I am also a little concerned about the future, but I think this is a very good first step, and I'm curious to see where and if, you know, it goes from here. There's some things I don't care for, but they're also not necessarily detracting from the experience for me. The QR code, the collectability, the weird sort of, this strange competitive scene that they're attempting to build. It just all seems a little bunch of hooey, but I don't care because I'm probably not engaging with that, right?
Right.
So it's not detracting for me. Overall, I'm liking what this is doing. Yes, the theme's a little weird, but the gameplay, I'm really liking. I like what this game is doing. I think it's a trading card game that I think should get some attention, obviously above and beyond all the money it made. So yeah, Altered gets an 8 out of 10 for me.
Well, there you go, folks. Check it out. Later this week, Zee's going to be talking about it, like you said, all the other stuff for it.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll scan a card one day. Until then, I'm Tom Vasel.
I'm Zee Garcia.
And we'll see you next time. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you like this review or whatever you just watched, wasn't it amazing? Check out our channel, Dice Tower. We have all kinds of things. We review games, we do top 10s, we play games live. It's all about board games, but especially the people who play them. Check out Dice Tower YouTube channel.